Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're discussing materialism.
You want to start with our names, maybe? My name's Hayden.
My name's Bennett.
Our topic that we chose is materialism. So we're going to kind of walk through it. We're going to get into a definition, the idea of body and soul, the existence of heaven, and if nothing immaterial can exist, does God exist? So let's walk us through the definition.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. What is materialism, you say? We have to reach the word limit. The time limit.
Dude, we're gonna get the time. We're at a minute.
Oh, okay. The definition of materialism is the doctrine that nothing exists except matter and its movements and modifications.
Yeah. So, with that said, makes you think, well, if nothing immaterial can exist, can a soul exist? Are we just bodies? Are we just corpses? Is there any essence behind our existence, or are we just matter?
Yeah, a lot of interesting thoughts come from this. The origins of materialism can be traced back to ancient philosophy.
So, a little background on materialism. It seemed to have emerged in many parts of the world back in ancient Indian philosophy. There was a Carvaka school who began studying materialism as early as 600 BCE. And around 200 years later, some ancient Greek philosophers like Democritus, Epicurus, Thales, Lucretius, and Aristotle began contributing to the ideas of materialism.
Aristotle and...
So, back to the body and soul idea. With materialism, it defies that logic. We can't have a soul because that's immaterial. So,
the body and soul is very interesting. They argue that...
Who's they?
The materialists argue that that nothing exists except matter. If nothing exists except matter, then how can the soul exist? So
right. So now there's some different there's some other kind of philosophies on this concept. So Aristotle had a model of hylomorphism, which is a combination of matter and form or body and soul as two dimensions of one being.
And also dualism, which is the separation of matter and mind, or the soul. So that makes a separation, defining it as two entities, so they're completely separate.
Right. So you get two entities in one person. So another aspect that needs to be talked about with materialism is heaven. Because,
if there's no soul, how can there be a heaven?
Cut me off again. If there's nothing immaterial, can there be a heaven? And if there is a heaven, does that mean it's material somehow? Are we somehow transported to a heaven physically with our matter? And
materialists believe that nothing exists beyond the physical world.
We've been over that.
And the soul being a non-physical entity, therefore they don't believe
So generally in most religions, your soul is regarded as your vessel to heaven. It's your car to heaven. You grab your keys, you grab your soul, you start it up, you drive to heaven. But since you can't have a soul under materialism, then you shouldn't be able to have a heaven under materialism. And so with that, you lead into, is there a God?
Is there a God, and also an afterlife aspect for materialists, what can they believe? They're very limited in their belief. Maybe they have some sort of reincarnation belief, such as the Hinduism. Since it could be traced back to ancient India, that might be a route they take.
Wait, is y'all AirPods not working?
Anyways, we're back, guys. So we're going to kind of be going over some criticism for materialism. So we have one guy who is a physicist, Rudolf Peirce. He played a major role in the Manhattan Project. He rejected materialism, stating the premise that you can describe in terms of physics the whole function of a human being, including knowledge and consciousness, is untenable. There's still something missing.
Yeah, I agree with Rudolph. Erwin Schrödinger said that consciousness cannot be accounted for in physical terms, for conscious is absolutely fundamental. It cannot be accounted for in terms of anything else.
Yeah.
This directly goes against materialism that believes everything is physical.
Yeah. So, you're conscious, you can't touch it, you can't see it, but we all know everyone has it. So, does this already immediately cancel out materialism? Does this already disprove it? We're gonna dig into that deeper.
So let's dig into the body and soul aspect of materialism. Obviously, the soul is it's not a physical thing, so they do not believe in it. So what do they believe in?
Right.
Do they think that everything is controlled by the brains and a bunch of neurons, firing?
So where do you feel like you guys left off where would be like a good place to pick up?
So we kind of went over everything and just kind of, we went over all the stuff with body and soul. Is there heaven? Is there a God? And basically came down to with these, with the consciousness argument, it kind of cuts out materialism.
Yeah.
And so then you can't really apply the rest of materialism to any of these parts. And so it's just like, where do we go from here with materialism? Do we try to exclude consciousness?
So, it's kind of funny when you kind of think about like technology today and like let's like take AI for example, right? Like the whole premise around AI is the notion that we can reduce like consciousness and artificial general intelligence to something that is material, right? Like ones and zeros. And while computers have certainly, can do a lot and can mimic a lot of human behavior, there becomes this big sort of question, and like, is it possible for like true complex consciousness as like humans are to like emerge out of just material ones and zeros and electric charges and things of that nature? And that's the big question that we'll see where AI kind of goes with it. And computers obviously can do a lot of things, but it's kind of like the question is like, what is it like to be a human being, right? And that's like a very subjective experience, and like we just simply kind of are ill-equipped to understand what is it like to be a computer, or what is it like to kind of inhabit other kind of modes of consciousness. And for me personally, like I am very, very skeptical of the notion that we will ever be able to capture like the full complexity of consciousness from just like pure materiality, right? Some people think that it's possible. There's kind of this whole kind of field in science right now. It's called like emergentism, right? Like it's like it is possible for consciousness to emerge out of just like material objects. But for me, I think there's something spiritual and intangible going on. I like to preserve the notion that there is like a such thing as a soul, and that is we might be able to do a lot with computers, but I think
can't fully replicate a human with it.
Yeah.
You think there's something missing? That's the soul.
I think there's something missing. I think some people call it the soul. I doubt that. I doubt that it's possible to fully replicate it.
I agree.
Human consciousness is such a complex thing that, like, it's elusive. It's elusive, and
Perfect
Great.
thing to piggyback off of. All right, piggybacking off of what Mr. Poche was talking about, he made a good point that, like, as we kind of find out more about our brains, our soul seems less useful. It's not as mystical. And I think materialism has become a more modern thing because, as time progresses, we find out more about our bodies, and, people convert to materialism because our soul doesn't seem like, a more logical reasoning behind some of these things.
Yeah, our guest speaker, Mr. Poche, he also touched on the the Enlightenment, the scientific Enlightenment. Hey, we're recording here, bud. Pipe it down. Sorry, guys.
Anyways, guys.
So, what our guest speaker, Mr. Poche, said, he touched on the Enlightenment, and he said that as we discover more about the brain and what our feelings actually are and how they're just a bunch of chemicals, I think that really adds to the materialist point of that it's just physical and that there's no soul. So it's just an interesting thought that as science evolves, the soul becomes less useful.
All right, guys. We want to feel some of y'all's input on this topic. Got to have some interaction with the listeners. So would Aiden Albin please stand up and share his view on materialism with the class, please?
Hello, we'll give you a quick 30 seconds, Albin.
All right, go ahead, stand up. There you go.
Any day now.
All right, All right, guys, we're wrapping up here. Got Bennett on a Teams call. We're doing a little quick Q&A session. All right, Bennett, let's get a definition on materialism.
Yeah, definition of materialism, the doctrine that nothing exists except matter and its movements and modification.
Right, and we went over, as you heard, the soul, the aspect of heaven and God under materialism, and a lot of what Mr. Poche was saying about it. I'd feel pretty confident if I was interviewed about materialism. What about you, Bennett?
I would as well. I think I learned a lot about it. I found some good things and a lot of negative things about it. I personally am I swing away from materialism.
Yeah, me too.
Mainly because the whole soul argument.
Yeah, for me, it's the conscious.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone has a conscious, and it's not a physical thing. So, I think that immediately, cancels out materialism.